Fluoride is safe and effective, and it's one of the most inexpensive ways to really cut down on dental decay.
Anything we can do to help prevent cavities on children, I think, is very important.
Absolutely, fluoride is safe, it's effective.
Fluoridation of community water is extremely safe and extremely effective in preventing tooth decay. Science is on the side of fluoride being safe and effective.
The science doesn't lie.
Water fluoridation, they didn't just walk out and say it's good for you. They actually hired Edward Bernays, Sigmund Freud's nephew, to sell Americans on how good it was to have silicon fluoride in the water.
Edward Bernays was the one that created how to control the population through media and through advertising.
Edward Bernays, also known as the father of spin, pioneered the idea of crowd psychology. In 1928, he wrote a book called Propaganda, in which he wrote, "If we understand the mechanism and motives of the group mind, is it not possible to control and regiment the masses according to our will without their knowing it?" He called it the engineering of consent. Bernays introduced the corporate giants to crowd psychology methods and polished techniques to manipulate society. He convinced the population to buy on impulse things they didn't even need. In his writings, he concluded that individuals were controlled by four basic motivations: self-preservation, aggression, security, and sex. Bernays' belief was that by appealing to any of these four motives, it was possible to manipulate the majority of a population into doing almost anything. You could brainwash them into smoking cigarettes, starting war, electing politicians, you name it. And given the proven effectiveness of these techniques, it was no coincidence that the Aluminum Company of America asked Bernays to head the campaign for the fluoridation of the United States water supply.
Did you know that the whole family, not just children, can benefit by drinking water that contains fluoride? It's a fact that in addition to brushing and flossing, the best way to keep your teeth is to drink fluoridated water.
In the small county of Elbit, Georgia, on one of the highest hilltops, stands a massive granite structure known as the Georgia Guidestones. Perfectly aligned with celestial bodies, this American Stonehenge was erected sometime in the late 70s. The enormous structure stands almost 20 feet high, is made of 6 granite slabs weighing in at almost 250,000 pounds. The most astonishing detail of the monument is not its size, but the messages that are carved into it. Engraved in 8 modern and 4 ancient languages are 10 commandments for a new age of reason. The first directive is the most sinister and alarming to us all. Maintain humanity under 500 million in perpetual balance with nature.
When most people think of fluoride, they just think simply of their bottle of toothpaste that they use every day. However, most of the population is uninformed about the truth about fluoride, and most people would be shocked if they knew the truth about this chemical. The use of fluoride began in the mid-1800s, and the steel smelters in Germany were the first to pay damages for the injuries caused by the emissions of fluoride. By the turn of the 20th century, German and British steel industries had to both pay damages and were affected by lawsuits over the fluoride emissions. When the 1930s rolled around, there was more and more evidence building up about the toxicity of fluoride, including the brown effect it was having on teeth. The use of fluoride largely began being promoted during the 1940s in the Manhattan Project. Fluoride was used as a key chemical in the manufacturing of bombs during the Second World War, and American scientists were well aware of the toxicity of this chemical. Program F was a classified operation to test the dangers and effects of fluoride on the population, and the truth about the dangers of fluoride was kept hidden from the public. The scientists in the Manhattan Project took blood and tissue samples from the citizens in Newburgh, New York, whose water had been fluoridated. The results showed that uranium hexafluoride causes damage to the central nervous system, and the fluoride was considered responsible. However, the results of the negative effects of fluoride were censored by the U.S. Atomic Energy Commission, and fluoride was allowed to be dumped into the environment and put in the public water supply. Dr. Dean Burke was an American biochemist and cancer researcher who spent over 30 years researching at the National Cancer Institute. Burke once said, "In point of fact, fluoride causes more human cancer death and causes it faster than any other chemical." And he seemed to have some convincing evidence of this. Here's an interview of Burke showing the connection of fluoride to cancer.
Now, Dr. Burke, your research shows that if all of the United States had been fluoridated, that would mean about 70,000 extra deaths because of cancer per annum. Those are remarkable, impressive, and in fact rather disquieting figures. Could you shortly describe your research in this field and what results did you get from it?
Yes. The 70,000, of course, would represent 1/5 of all the cancer deaths in the United States, twice as many from breast cancer in women, and twice as many as from lung cancer in man. Our studies involved comparing the deaths of all persons in the 10 largest fluoridated cities of the United States with the 10 largest non-fluoridated cities in the United States year by year. And we obtained a very remarkable curve, which you can see here perhaps. Here is the fluoridated, and here is the non-fluoridated set of 10 cities each. Here's where the fluoridation started, and before this time, both sets of cities were identical. But no sooner had fluoridation started than this curve began to go up, the deaths began to increase, so that this effect occurs very promptly within 1, 2, or 5 years.
Now this, sir, is conclusive evidence that fluor kills because of cancer.
It is one of the most conclusive bits of scientific and biological evidence that I have come across in my 50 years in the field of cancer research.
Would this then, in your opinion, be the end of fluor in water, in drinking water?
It should be the end, and in the United States, it should so be the end by federal law known as the Delaney Amendment, which says that anything found to induce cancer in man or animals cannot be legally put into the food or drink of man or animals.
Fluoride has many effects on human health, including fluorosis, osteoporosis, arthritis, and even thyroid damage. There have been 53 studies conducted showing that fluoride can reduce the IQ of an individual. The results of these studies show that in high fluoride areas, children show a decreased number of IQ points when compared to low fluoride areas. Don't believe me? There was even a Harvard study that confirmed this and proved that there is a connection between fluoride ingestion and a reduction of human cognitive functioning. Fluoride is a toxic chemical and has been repeatedly proven so, and I think it's about time people come to terms with it. Fluoride has been classified as Part 2 poison under the UK Poisons Act of 1972, and Germany, Belgium, and Luxembourg rejected water fluoridation and labeled it as a violation of human rights. So if you still think that fluoride is absolutely safe and good for you, sorry, but even your own governments disagree with you. Now, I've come to the conclusion, just like many of you, that David Icke is controlled opposition. But every now and then, he will say something that is worth listening to. Just to be clear, I'm not supporting David Icke in any way or saying that I agree with everything he says, but what he has to say about fluoride I found was excellent and worth sharing. So, here you go.
And they're putting fluoride in the water. Why would they bloody do that? It's part of the agenda, that's why. This is fluoride, an ingredient in Prozac, sarin nerve gas, rat cockroach poisons, and pesticides, anesthetic, hypnotic, and psychiatric drugs, and it doesn't stop tooth decay. This is from the website of one of the companies that sells fluoride for water fluoridation. This is what it says about fluoride on its own website. There's many other examples of this with other companies that do it. Fluoride is used in the manufacture of effervescing steel and the smelting and refining of light metals. It is also used in fluoridation of drinking water as a wood preservative, an adhesive preservative, an insecticide, a protective coating for metals, a pickle for steels and other metals, a flux for soldering and welding, as well as a flux and pacifier for ceramic, glass and porcelain enamel. They're putting it in the bloody water. They're putting it in the toothpaste. That's what it's doing with fluorosis, but why would any sane people who care about humanity be putting the bloody waste products from the aluminium industry into drinking water and toothpaste? They would be doing it if they had an agenda for the mental, emotional and physical suppression of humanity. That's why they would do it. And some research is pointing to the fact that fluoride, when it's connected with the aluminium in chemtrails, creates something called aluminium fluoride, which has been connected to mass sedation and dementia. And this guy, Dr. Dean Burke, 34 years at the National Cancer Institute in America, said in point of fact, fluoride causes more human cancer death and it causes it faster than any other chemical. Think coal agenda.
If you are anything like me, then you probably don't think that the government is putting hydrofluoric acid and fluoridated chemicals in the water supply because the government cares about our teeth. It seems apparent that the fluoride is put in the water to help dumb down the population and keep people stupid. We all know it's easier to control a population that is dumb and docile rather than trying to control a smart, alert population. So it would only make sense that these psychopaths would poison our water. With fluoride being the toxic chemical that it is, now it makes sense why the back of my toothpaste bottle says to call poison control if swallowed. Nothing wrong there. Now this is one of those things where I really wish I was wrong, but it's very obviously true. So I thought I might ask you guys if you know any good non-fluoridated natural toothpaste brands that I could use rather than continuing to willingly poison myself on a daily basis if I don't have to. If you guys know any good brands, then that would be extremely helpful. But anyways, as always, keep spreading truth, and till next time.
This, you see, amounts to public murder on a grand scale. It is a public crime. It would be to put fluoride in the drinking water of people.
Now, the children of this cameraman and mine, sir, take fluor. Should we stop this immediately?
Well, in my opinion, if they were my children, they would not take it anymore. I can only recommend for myself, but I would suggest to you that they stop it.
I'm going to do a water test, electrocoagulation, tap water. We've got Smart Water made by Coca-Cola. Evian. And distilled water. Straight from the distiller, distilled last night. This is the electrocoagulation apparatus. See the bubbling start straight away. This is breaking the electrical bonds between the substances in the water. It's going to reveal them and tell us more about the water. We've done a pH test and a ppm test on all waters, so we've got a pH of of the tap water is 7.4, the smart water 7.2, the Evans 7.4, and the distilled water 7.1. And the ppm, parts per million, tap water 276, smart water 225, Evian 265, and the distilled water 002. It's usually 000, but it picks up carbon dioxide as soon as it comes into the jug, and it absorbs it. So as you can see, the smart water is getting really dark, the tap water's also getting very murky. And as we can see, all the sediments in the water that are being revealed, this is what fills up our bodies. It gets in all in our tissue, in between our joints, causes arthritis later on in life, and all different problems and conditions, and leads to diseases. And to hydrate ourselves, we want to be drinking water that can go into the cells. These waters, they can't hydrate us properly because the molecules are all clumped together. And hydration is one of the #1 causes of conditions and diseases. Right, so it's getting hot now. I'm going to turn the machine off. And as we can see, the colours have been revealed. We've got black for smart water, which is basically pure heavy metals, zinc, lead, copper. So it's just filled with heavy metals. The tap water is slightly blue and green, so we've got bacteria, viruses, carcinogens, organic phosphorus, fertilisers, detergents and pesticides, and with the green as well as arsenic, mercury, lead, copper and sodium. So all them poisons, and this is what we feed our families, our kids, our babies, you know, mixing it in with everything. So we've got all these problems. Mercury is like one of the most poisonous things you can possibly have. Arsenic's a poison. We've got bacteria, pathogenic bacteria in the water. Let's turn this one off now. Right, and you can see the Evian is slightly yellow and I would say a little bit off green, so it's got lots of organic minerals in there, other organics, possible fluoride, silicon compounds, and some heavy metals, arsenic, mercury, lead and copper and sodium. And as you can see, the distilled water having no parts per million in there is totally clear, and really this should prove a point to get on the distilled water. Hydrate yourself, cleanse yourself and treat your body and your families well.
There is, of course, you talk about murder, sir, an ethical aspect to all this, a law aspect, an aspect of people's inhumanity to people. What is your idea about how should this be implemented in our society? The ethical aspects of administering poison, as it were, to people.
Well, I think this aspect, this murder aspect, clearly indicates a very strong unethical aspect to forcing people to kill themselves.
may be at church. You may be at work. You may be asleep. God grant that you will be ready when he makes his personal appearance. My God, what if his appearance occurs on a Sunday morning? My prophetic word to you